Hi, this is Pete Shearer, and in this Dimecast, I'm going to do a very simple Hello World iOS application with Objective-C. Along the way, we're going to get familiar with the basics of Xcode, Interface Builder, and some Objective-C syntax. To get started off, I'm using Xcode version 5, which is the current production release. And to get started, we're just going to click this Create a New Xcode Project link. We have a lot of options here, but we are just going to choose iOS, Application, and then Single View Application. This will allow Xcode to set us up with everything that we're going to need for this application, and we're going to click Next. For our product name, let's put Hello Objective-C. Organization name, you can have anything you like. For a company identifier, it's typically a reverse DNS style identifier. For this project, I'm going to put net.dimecasts. Next, because Objective-C doesn't have the concept of namespacing, it is considered good practice to prefix your classes with a special prefix so that if you have a person class and a third-party library has a person class, there's no confusion because here we will have a DCN person and they will have an XYZ person. Lastly, I'm going to build this application for iPhone only. Click Next. Choose a location to store your project. I'm going to leave it at my default code location. Next, you can opt whether or not to let Xcode manage your source control. I typically do that for myself from the command line, so I'm going to leave this box empty and click Create. Alright. Now we're into our project in Xcode, and over here on the left we have the Project Navigator. This is where all of your code structure lives. You'll notice that we have H files, .h files, and .m files for every class. This is the C legacy of Objective-C showing through. We'll deal more in depth with those concepts in a later episode. For now, let's single click on main.storyboard. We now can see our view for our application. This arrow on the left means that this is the default view. In case we had a more complicated storyboard, this would help us identify our entry point. In the bottom right is the object library. If for some reason you don't have the object library, you can just click this third icon here that looks like a cube and it will show up. Let's scroll down until we find a button, and let's drag 3 buttons onto our view and also 1 label. I'm going to arrange them quickly to kind of make sure they're leveled off. You see you get a lot of guides, and then one right in the middle. I'm going to take this label, I'll left align it and make it as wide as all the views. And now over here on the right we have the property inspector, and I have the attributes inspector selected. There are others, but for now you come over here and delete label. So now I've got a blank label, and I'm also going to opt that when we do put text it will be centered. Now each button, I'm going to take the first button and change its text from button to red. The middle one will be blue, and the rightmost button will be green. Okay, let's take a moment, and in the upper left hand corner you've got this play button. Let's hit that, and we have our simulator. You'll notice we have the layout just as we designed. You can't see the label because there's no text in it, but if I click the buttons they don't do anything. So let's fix that. Hit stop. So if I come up here to the right, upper right hand, and above all the editors, I can choose the assistant editor. It's the one that looks like a tuxedo. What that'll do is that'll bring up the M file for the current view controller that you're working on. The M file is the one where the implementation happens. So the first thing I'm going to do is select my label, and if I hold down Control and click the label and then drag over here into this little interface section and let go, I have the option to add an outlet. An outlet is something, it will create an IB outlet, which stands for Interface Builder Outlet. It's a way to let Xcode know that this code in this module file, the M file, is the ties to this particular object over in the nib, which is the Interface Builder file. So we'll leave it at outlet. We'll give it a name. In this case, I'm just going to call it output label. It's a type UI label, and the storage type is going to be weak, which means that we are going to, it has to do with reference counting and memory management. If you have weak storage on it, that means that you will not retain it any longer than you need to. Connect. And that will auto create for us a property, which is weak, non-atomic. It's got that IB outlet that I described. It's of type UI label. And here's again the C syntax showing through. This asterisk, it means that it's a pointer to output label, and we'll leave that alone. Now when we click this red button, I'm going to do the same thing, hold down Control. Now I don't need a reference to the button for our project, but I do need to create effectively a click event. So I'm going to click, Control click, drag to the right, down here at the bottom of our class right above the end, and let go. It's going to create an action, which is like our button click event. The object that's going to handle the action is our view controller. That's not something I can configure. We'll give it a name. I'm just going to call it button was clicked. The type, this ID, id, some people say id, some people say ID. That's the generic type of when you don't know what the type of something would be, you can declare that. But in this case, we know that it'll be a UI button. And that's all we want this click event to handle. Touch up inside, that is the convention for when you have a button that you want to handle an event on. If someone raises their finger, and as they raise their finger, they were still inside that button, the button's area, this event will fire. So if you had your finger, if you think about it, you had your finger on a button and you didn't want to touch it, you could slide your finger down off the button, lift, and then the button won't fire. So you don't want to do it on touch down. We want to handle touch up. And the arguments are going to be the sender. We want the button that was clicked to be passed in. So I hit connect. So now I've got this method. This minus means that it's a class method of IB action. Again, the IB in front, you can remember from IB outlet. IB means that it's tied to Interface Builder. And this also lets Xcode know that this method ties over to something in the Interface Builder. As we named it, button was clicked. And the thing coming in is a UI button, again a pointer, called sender. Now in this case, in reality, what I'd like the code to do is that when I click the red button, I'd like to turn the screen red. When I click the blue button, I'd like to turn the screen blue. And when I click the green button, I'd like to turn the screen green. That kind of code is very, very similar, and it could all be handled by the same button event. So in that case, I want to tie those together. So what I can do is if I click blue, and then I come over here, and instead of being here at the Attributes Inspector, if I come to the Connections Inspector, you'll see for the blue button, I have all of these potential events. And here we see the touch up inside. If I hold down Control, click that, and pull it over here to this view controller that controls this view, I let it go, it's going to show me everything that has the signature to potentially handle that. In that case, it's our one button was clicked method. One time, I'll click green, Control click, drag to the view controller, let go, button was clicked. Now all three of these buttons will fire here. Alright? So the first thing I'm going to do is capture the title of the button that was used. Okay, so I'm going to declare ns_string. It's a pointer, so I'll have asterisk title equals sender current title. Now, something interesting about Objective-C is while it does allow you to occasionally use dot syntax that you might be used to with other object-oriented language, typically Objective-C is a message passing language. So in this case, using these square brackets, I start with the object, and then a space, and then the message that I'd like to pass to it. So in this case, I'm passing the current title message to the sender, and since it knows how to handle it, it will return to me an NS string of title. The next thing I'd like to do is I'm going to declare a UI color, new background, and I'm going to set as default, I'm going to set that to UI color, white color. Just in case any of the code we're about to write doesn't fire, we will at least initialize this new background to something else, and the background will go back to the default white. The next thing I'm going to do is say if title is equal to string red, I'm going to set the new background equal to UI color, red color. So let's take a look at what we did here. Again, we're using that message passing syntax with the square brackets. Title is our string in our object that we're operating on. Is equal to string is the message that we're passing. You could also think of it as the method that's being called, but technically it is the message that we're passing. And then we're saying red. So that's the parameter that we're passing as well. So this is the proper way to do string comparisons in Objective-C. And you'll notice the other little kind of complexity is this @ symbol right in front of what you'd expect as just a double quoted string, kind of a standard string you might expect. You add the @ symbol to make this an NS string so that it's comparable. Alright, so next step, I'm just going to do this 2 more times. You might say, well, why wouldn't you use a switch statement? The interesting thing is that Objective-C, as of right now, switch statements only work on integers. You cannot switch on a string. So the only option if you wanted to do something like this would be if you were to create an enumeration and then switch on that. We're not doing that today, so we're stuck kind of repeating ourselves a little bit. Blue color, and then I'm going to compare it to green and green color. Now that we have this information, let's use it. So we remember this class is backing a view controller. So we're going to say self, the view controller, dot view, the view that the view controller is controlling, dot background color, equals new background. We're saying the background color of the view to this new background. You'll notice here I am using the dot syntax because usually when you're setting a property like this, it's considered okay to use the dot syntax, and it's just convention. Next, I'm going to access the output label, text equal to NS string with format, and my string is going to be the screen is now okay. You'll notice when I acted on this output label, I put an underscore here, even though up here there's no underscore. This is something else that the language and that Xcode do for you, the tooling to access this. So anytime you had, if I tried to operate on output label .text, you'll notice, see Xcode's telling me right off the bat, is use of undeclared identifier, did I mean underscore? And if I let them fix it for me, you'll see they give me this underscore. So that's the correct syntax. Also here we have NS string, has string with format. In this case, it's kind of like a static method off of the string class. But in this case, so we're passing the string with format message to NS string. I give it first my formatted string, and then what I want to stick in there. And then this format identifier just says that I'm going to pass in an object. In this case, this is the format you use for standard. Just going to pass in a string that you don't want to do any special operations on. Alright, now we're good to go. So if I hit the play button, we have our simulator, our 3 buttons. This time when I click red, the screen turns red and our message says the screen is now red. Blue, the screen is now blue. And green, the screen is now green. That's it for this time. We've seen how to create an iOS project for the iPhone. We've seen how to wire up some buttons, use Interface Builder to lay out a simple implementation to wire up the buttons and to access some properties. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time.